Movieflex Double Features, the only podcast daring enough to ask the questions, what if movies, but two of them? I'm one of your hosts, Estebs, here, as always, with your other host, Matt, aka the Posting Pro. Matt, how you doing?
Yo, what's up, y'all? I'm doing all right. How are y'all?
Great. This week, again, we're joined by our wonderful guest, Travis, aka at Uzumaki. Travis, how's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back on.
Sweet, yeah, man. It's a pleasure. You know, it's our pleasure. You are bringing us the double feature this week. It's very Joseph Conrad, let's say. We'll get to the movies in a second, but first, I wanted to ask you guys about like stuff off pod that you've been watching, like non-Werner Herzog or like Apocalypse Now related movies. Anything you've seen recently that you want to recommend. I, for instance, have not been doing a good job of watching a lot of stuff or keeping up. So the last thing I saw was outside of the podcast. The last thing I watched was Semi-Pro, which the Will Ferrell movie, which it's fucking hilarious. There's so many great like one-liners. Andy Daly is amazing in that. There's like the part where he's like him and Joe Bluth. I can't remember his name right now. Yeah, but they're really funny together. So Travis, what have you been watching?
Yeah, so my girlfriend and I this weekend, we almost made a triple feature. So this is Apocalypse Now related. She'd never seen it. We watched Full Metal Jacket to start off the weekend. I've seen it God knows how many times, and it's just better every time. That movie ages like wine.
Sweet. She'd never seen Apocalypse Now?
She'd never seen either Apocalypse Now, the movie, or Full Metal Jacket. So yeah, it was a fun time.
Yeah, Full Metal Jacket I can kind of see just because, like, I don't know. Matt, do you like that movie?
Yeah, I like that movie.
It's definitely my least favorite Kubrick.
Oh, really? It's one of my favorite war movies. I mean, it's two movies for the price of one, so it's pretty easy watch. Yeah. You can split it up if you want, but I love it.
I'm shocked. Most people's least favorite Kubrick is Spartacus, which I really like, but
I don't know because didn't he get fired like halfway through or just write it or something? Like I don't know. I don't really consider that like a full on Kubrick.
Spartacus, he got hired on halfway through, I think was the story.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a full on. I don't really count that like when I'm counting his his filmography or whatever.
One of his canonical movies.
His oeuvre. It's out of the canon, man. But that's really cool, dude. Yeah, I love the idea of like watching Apocalypse Now with a girl. Like that's
yeah, she loved it.
That's awesome. No,
we'll talk about the movie, but yeah, no, it's fun.
Sweet. Matt, what about you?
What were you watching?
So I went pretty hard in the paint with regards to movies. So it's like I had like one night or maybe 2 nights this past week. I had like a triple feature, which is pretty insane for me. I don't usually do that. It's normally like a double at most. I watched The Player today. I had a double feature today. I watched Patty Hearst, and then when I got off work, I watched The Player, Robert Altman.
Oh, sweet.
I love that movie.
Yeah, me too.
Last night, I watched The Comfort of Strangers, and then before The Comfort of Strangers, I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which gets better with every watch. So
it's like the third time you watched it, right?
Yeah, it's the third time I've watched it.
Sweet. What did you think of The Player?
I liked it a lot. It was funny. I was reading something about it, and it was Altman considers it a very light satirical comedy. Like he's like it's very light satire because he's like it doesn't really say much, which I thought was kind of true. It has a signature. I found something like you can tell an Altman movie when people talk over each other in the movie because like that happens most of the time in movies, right? Like dialogue is kind of like, I'm going to talk this. I'm going to talk like dialogue. And sometimes they'll interrupt each other, but like mainly the other actor will like shut up if another actor's talking.
Yeah. it's a nightmare in editing otherwise.
Altman's first ever movie was Countdown, and he got fired from it because he wanted to do all these scenes, party scenes of people talking over each other, and the studio wasn't having it. And then he ended up creating recording technology that made it even better to have these like chaotic cacophony scenes like in Nashville.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like that happens a lot. And then I really like the opening too, where they're talking about movies and like, oh, also he's like, oh, what'd you go and see? He's like, The Bicycle Thieves. He's like, wow, great movie. He's like, it's an art house movie. It's not a movie. I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, yeah, it's still relevant. Like 1992 is still relevant to today, where he's just like, oh, Bicycle Thief. I'm talking about like a movie, like a Hollywood movie. That one guy's only seen American movies too. He's like, what about this? It's a European movie. He's like, oh, I've never seen it. Orson Welles, great American filmmaker.
Yeah. No, that's like that's like one of the most like I would say like traditional Altmans, like non-Altman Altmans, where it's like pretty straightforward. Like this through line is pretty strong with Tim Robbins.
Fun meta ending to it.
Yeah, it's pretty Altman though. Like I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like the scenes, there's a lot of scenes where people talking over each other and a bunch of characters, and it's very chaotic. And there's like. He doesn't really cut that much. Like he even has a joke about like cutting. He's like, it's all MTV. So. But yeah, I liked it.
I also saw a movie called Onibaba by Kanato Shindo. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. It's in the Criterion Collection. It's one of the earlier ones they've done. It's a Japanese horror movie. Kind of like a fairy tale folklore kind of movie, like maybe a little bit Robert Eggers vibes, guy who's seen a Robert Eggers movie once getting real Robert Eggers vibes to it.
Yeah,
basically it's in that tradition of like a folk tale. And
sure, this poster looks familiar.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's one of the older like Criterion. I think it's like one something or like in the collection or whatever.
Yeah,
I finally saw Prometheus. It's the only alien movie I had never seen. Because when it came out, like everyone I respected told me that it sucked. So, I never saw it, but then somehow I got roped into seeing the other one. The one after that,
Covenant.
Yeah, I got roped into seeing that in theaters, and yeah, I didn't like it. But yeah, I didn't like Prometheus either. Ridley Scott's really, just. He needs to just let it go, I think like
I think those movies might have benefited from not being attached to the Alien franchise. I agree. I enjoyed the two of them together as like a fun diversion, but obviously they don't compare to the first two movies.
I just didn't like him as movies. Like, I didn't care so much about how they were related to the original trilogy. It was more just like I don't know, like because in the second one they basically just like completely write off the first one anyway. It was like, I went to that planet and killed everyone or whatever.
Sure, there was like a fanfic element to it.
Yeah. But yeah, Ridley Scott. I don't know. He got like there was a Neil Blomkamp. I think it was a TV show, Alien TV show, in the works for a while. And I think that's off, but
yeah, he wanted to do the Alien. So he wanted to do the Covenant, right? Like not Covenant, but he wanted to do the movie that was going to be Covenant, the next Alien movie. And then he did Chappie, and then everyone hated Chappie. Apparently, I've never seen Chappie, but like most people hated it. And then so everyone was like, yeah, fuck this guy. And then he's been making like independent films that not many people have seemed to like. So.
He did his like I forget what was his studio called. He did like his self-funded little art project studio. They had a cool couple shorts that I enjoyed, but yeah. Chappie is a movie I liked when in high school. I was like cringily into the Antwoord, and so I liked watching them and Chappie playing themselves. I thought it was really fun and funny, but not a good movie on its own legs.
Have you ever seen the video of the guy from D. Antwoord? Or it's both of them actually. It's D. Antwoord telling the story about like going to Kanye's house.
Oh yeah. I think that's just Ninja.
Yeah, he shows them like porn and then like makes some banana pudding. He's like, give me this banana pudding. He's
And then
that
you get
South
to go
African.
play basketball with Drake.
Yeah. Playing basketball with Drake. I can't do a South African accent, but
I won't even
yeah.
try.
Yeah, no. So yeah, Neil Blomkamp shit got canceled, but I think they're still making an FX series with Noah Hawley, who I'm a big fan of. The guy who did, he's a writer, you know his work, but also he did the Fargo TV series, which I'm a big fan of. But that also has a 5th season coming out, which I'm stoked for. Yeah. So I guess with that, we'll get to this week's double feature. Before I get into the movies, though, Travis, I want you to explain yourself. Tell us like why you chose these 2 movies, what you think like links them, and just I guess you could talk about also like maybe like your introduction to Coppola. We're doing Coppola's movies first, so if you want to talk about like your introduction to Coppola, feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of worked backwards on this one. Last year, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, probably, I just totally by chance watched 2 movies, one of them being the second one together. Ended up being a great double feature, and I really enjoyed it. And I was going to bring that one here, and then Matt had told me that he never seen our first movie, Apocalypse Now, and so I thought there's obviously a connection between Apocalypse Now and our second movie, Aguirre, The Wrath of God.
Yeah.
And so I thought, let's do these 2 river journey movies together. There's this aesthetic connection. One definitely influenced the other. And I think Coppola's stylistic approach to Vietnam is so awesome in Apocalypse Now, 1979. It's about, I believe this is like pre-Tet Offensive Vietnam War. Saigon is still occupied by the Americans, and you just have this really cool style of adapting Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. So I grew up watching The Godfather 1 and 2. I never got around to seeing the third. I've heard bad things, but I haven't had the chance.
We talked about that a little bit on Twitter. Like we're both the same. Like we both grew up with 1 and 2 a lot. Never watched the third. I've tried to watch it, and then I remember being like, somehow the vibes were off. And then somebody reminded me, yeah, it's because fucking like 30-something like Andy Garcia is like flirting with his cousin who's like 20-year-old Sofia Coppola. It's very weird. It's very fucked up.
Yeah.
I was right. I'm not gonna watch that movie.
And then my dad showed me Patton when I was younger. Then just recently I've gotten around to seeing Bram Stoker's Dracula and The Conversation, which I loved both of them. And now, I'm just a huge fan of Coppola now. I need to go back through and fill in all the gaps of movies I haven't seen, but I'm looking forward to Megalopolis. I don't care what. I have not seen Jack, but I need to.
That's essential. I have a funny Coppola Jack story that I'll tell when we get into the movie.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to Megalopolis. I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to be sitting there front row and seeing it.
Yeah. Matt, what about you? What's your history with Coppola?
I love how you laugh. You couldn't even finish the question before you laughed.
I was like, man, I really want Matt to talk, and then I was like, well, what's the logical question to ask him? And then when I realized what it was it was too funny, you know?
So I didn't grow up watching The Godfather, like you guys. I had heard it was a seminal film as like a film bro. Right? Everyone says, "Oh, The Godfather is the best movie ever made." I'm like, okay. Never saw it. Never saw it on TV. Weirdly enough, or any. I've never seen. I only saw the, you come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. Like
that's
that.
really good.
Yeah,
that was solid.
Yeah, that's the only scene I saw from it. So the first movie that I ever saw from Coppola was one of my sister's favorite movies growing up, which was because she was a huge Keanu Reeves fan, which is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Worst accent you've ever heard in a movie, probably.
Awful.
Good, very good movie though.
He did
Gary Oldman. Yeah, really fun movie.
What's
Gary Oldman fucking rules in that movie too, where he's like,
Yeah.
"Look what your God's done to me."
Like
It was like,
Keanu
hell yeah.
Reeves made so many period pieces during that time in his career. Like he was in like a Shakespeare adaptation as well. He was like, man, he was all over period pieces, which is insane because it's Keanu Reeves, you know.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
doesn't
and
look like a guy out of his time. He looks
He
he
doesn't look
looks
like a
like a
guy from the
21st century
1800s.
man.
Yeah.
Gary Oldman rules in that movie. But yeah, that was the first movie I'd ever seen. I am a staunch. I have to give it a rewatch now, but I am a staunch. Like I put off seeing The Godfather 1 and 2 for so long because I had heard it's the best movie ever. It's the greatest film ever made. Nothing can top it. It's #1 on IMDb's top 250 when that mattered. Everyone's just like, it's the best movie ever made. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. I knew for a fact, like, and this kind of colored my not wanting to watch it. I knew for a fact, I was like, as soon as I watch this movie, I think I'm going to be disappointed. And like, I don't want to like have that shame where I can just say, I haven't seen The Godfather. Like, I'll just be disappointed. We're fixing to lose all of our listeners right here. I watched The Godfather.
No, because I love The Godfather. I'm a huge Godfather defend. You know, send me all the cannolis. You know, like I'll if you're mad at Matt for not liking The Godfather, then just like call a friend and listen to me. I understand. Like this is continue, Matt. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't like it when I saw it. I watched it with a friend, with a roommate. We watched it on the big screen. It wasn't on my 24-inch monitor at the time. Yeah, I was not a huge fan.
24 is big for a monitor, though.
Yeah, I was not a huge fan. And then, out of morbid curiosity, because everyone was like, "What? You don't like The Godfather?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually really didn't like it." And they're like,
Wow.
"Oh, well, you gotta see part 2." I'm like, "Okay." So I watched part 2. Didn't care for it. That one I did watch on my 24-inch monitor, but yeah. I didn't care for either of those. I need to rewatch them. Yeah. So that's my Coppola story. Those were the only 3 movies I had seen from Coppola: Bram Stoker's Dracula, and then Godfather Part 1 and 2.
You know, I would love to see what The Godfather would have been had Sergio Leone taken the director's job.
I did get drunk during watching the first Godfather, though. Like I was tipsy, like by the end of that movie, because it's a long fucking movie, dude. I was like, hold on, like we're fucking going where now? Let me go get a beer real quick.
That's why you gotta smoke weed, dude. Because you smoke weed and you're just like, I'm not leaving this couch. You know, you're just into the movie, man. Yeah, I know. Like, but yeah. So Coppola like came to our college to like give a Q&A. He gave some really good advice. Like, he told us like most people are like waiting to like have a career before they have a kid, but he's like, what I did was I had a kid first, and then it like forced me to like have a career, basically. Like put me under the gun, really motivated me. But yeah, at some point some kid came up and tried to like own him about the movie Jack with Robin Williams, which like if you've never seen it, essentially like in the movie Jack, like Robin Williams plays a kid who's like he's like an 8-year-old, but he's like in Robin Williams' body because he like ages really fast. But like in real life, like progeria, that disease that does that, like they don't look like Robin Williams. And so basically this kid like came up and like tried to call Coppola out and be like, Jack wasn't an accurate portrayal of progeria, blah blah blah. Yeah. And Coppola was just like, dude, I just did the job for the money. Like, I was bankrupt. I didn't have anything. I was fucked up, man. Like, what do you want me to say?
Yeah.
With that said, let's get to our first movie. Our first movie is 1979's Apocalypse Now. As we said, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, also written by John Milius, rewritten by Francis Ford Coppola later, I guess, like kind of combination of them. John Milius, if you don't know who he is, he like he he was one of the film movie rats, but like while everyone was like super liberal, he was just like a gun maniac, right wing kind of. If you've ever seen The Big Lebowski, John Goodman's character is literally based off of him. Like that he literally looks and acts and dresses like Wall Street. in real life. But yeah, he wrote the first two Dirty Harry movies. He wrote and directed Conan and Rescue Dawn or Red Dawn. I mean, sorry, he did not co-direct the Werner Herzog movie Rescue Dawn. But yeah, yeah. So he's just like a crazy character. I can get into it more later, but I want to know what you guys thought of the movie.
Do you want me to go first? Or you want Travis to go first?
Well, yeah. Since Travis recommended it, let's go like Travis first. But I'm dying to know what you thought of it, Matt. So like let's save the suspense. You know.
Okay, Travis.
So obviously, I recommend this movie because I absolutely love it. I've seen it a handful of times. This time, I opted to watch the Redux. So it's like 3 hours long. It's got an extra 50 minutes of uncut stuff in there. I mean, this movie is just, it's such an experience watching it every time because the emotions and sort of my reaction to it for the first hour is so different from how I feel towards the end of the movie. And I'll get into what I think about the ending, but you know, the genre changes so much from, you know, that first meeting of Robert Duvall's character Bill Kilgore and you know, the amazing Charlie Don't Surf scene to, you know, the end where they're at like the carnival from hell and everyone's tripping and on acid and stoned and freaking. I mean, this movie just really takes you on an adventure from start to finish, and it makes you as an audience member really a part of this Heart of Darkness journey into like the jungle into Cambodia. And so I love it. I think it's a really fun movie to get involved in as an audience member.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to boot.
Yeah, I should say the Heart of Darkness thing. John Milius had read it as a teenager, and then when he was in college, his professor like had said that like no one's ever made a good adaptation of it. So he like adapts it, but he does the genius thing of like not just adapting it, but he adds a twist. The twist being Vietnam. So he like obviously makes a lot of changes from the original story. It's very different. But yeah, Matt, what did you think of Apocalypse Now?
All right. So before I tell you what I think, I have to do a little build up for this one. There's 3 or 4 different versions of this movie.
Yeah, there's 3 major cuts. There's the original theatrical version. There's the Redux from like the late 90s, early 2000s, and then there's the final cut.
Yeah, so the final cut's relatively new. It's Coppola's. It's like the director cut.
Yeah.
Redux is where they add back in most of the scenes that they cut, and then the theatrical cut is, of course, obviously the one that played in theaters. So I read an article after I had viewed this movie, or actually before I'd view this movie, trying to figure out which cut we should watch because Travis said, "I don't think it matters." I think it 100% matters which cut you should watch.
Yeah, and I said, yeah, I was just saying, I think it matters which version you watch. I was just saying, as far as this podcast goes, I think if we watch different versions, we could talk about the differences.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so yes. Anyway, I think it definitely matters which version you watch. 100% because I was reading this article beforehand and it was like, here's them ranked, right? And I'm like, oh shit, they got them ranked. Okay, so it was like number 1 was the best one was theatrical cut, and then it was like Redux, and then it was final. I was like, okay, let me be an idiot, and I watched the final. I watched this movie twice before the pod, by the way, because my ranking changes drastically depending on the cut. Final cut did not like at all. I was like, that's why I posted like, yeah, 2 of these I liked with my letterbox. And I was like, I did not like this cut at all. If I had to rate it, I'd rate it like 2.
Damn.
Theatrical cut is a 4. I think sometimes directors need guys who will like pull back on them. For those in the know, the final cut has the plantation scene.
Yeah,
and,
Prince Colonialist.
Yeah, and says in an interview, he's like, "It's not working. We need to cut it."
Yeah.
and I 100% agree with him. Jesus Christ, that scene dragged the movie so far down. It was pointless. I hated it. But yeah, so my review, I guess, that I really liked the theatrical cut. It's probably like a 4.
Yeah.
And then the final cut's a 2.
Yeah, this was my third time watching this. Like originally, the first time I saw it, there was the Redux, and I just remember thinking like, "Oh, there's a really good movie in here somewhere," but there's a lot of like other stuff that maybe should be cut out. I can't remember which one I watched the second time, but this time I watched the theatrical cut. It was 5 stars for me. I think it like, I don't know. I think like the fact that like it picks up on this like montage. They're playing the Doors, and then like the ending, they like literally fade the song back in from where it cut off at the beginning. Like it's this great bookend or whatever, and like yeah, the whole journey is crazy. Like the psychedelic soldiers, and like where they get to that last like outpost where there's no more American outposts beyond that point. Like I think it's really like I don't know. I think it's really good. I think it's like like I said, he like twist the Heart of Darkness tale by setting in Vietnam, changing a lot of this of the stuff like of the like story points and stuff, and yeah, I think like the Martin Sheen performance is amazing. I think Marlon Brando playing himself is amazing.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Like he
I think
rocks.
Marlon
Like
Brando is the best part of the movie, to be
yeah,
honest, which is
I
crazy.
feel like they just let the camera roll and we're like, yeah, like don't even tell him we're filming. Just let him talk. Like he was
Oh,
great.
The
yes,
lighting of the scenes with Marlon Brando, where you're first seeing him and he's in just this stark darkness, and then
Yeah.
he comes out and just the one half of his face is lit and the other half is pitch black. I mean, it's just such beautiful filming towards the end there.
yeah, I, not to cut you off, Stephen, but like I
Okay.
did the most preparation for this movie because I watched like 5.5 hours of a movie, and then I read some stuff, and then I watched that hour-and-a-half documentary, Hearts of Darkness. So
Oh yeah, which we should say directed by his wife. Amazing.
they did just like let the camera roll on Marlon Brando, which is pretty crazy because
Yeah.
he was such a pain in the ass to work with apparently, and that's what I'm saying. Like I think the fact that like some people, and I think most of the time, like limits on creators, I think are good things because that's when you get the most creative stuff. So like,
Sure, yeah, I agree.
I think that's why the final cut I hated because it seemed like it was unfettered. It seemed like a creative, like like a brilliant painter who just decided to splash paints around, and not necessarily make a creative thing. And then like, the theatrical cut was a limiting on him. But the same thing with Marlon Brando, right? Like Marlon Brando, like would not play ball with Coppola at all. So Coppola had to kind of like cobble together this performance with Brando, and with the limit that was imposed on him by Brando. Brando gives the best performance in the film.
Oh yeah.
Because Francis lets him ramble and then kind of contains it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should also say like Coppola, like after this movie, he makes a movie called One from the Heart. That's a huge bomb, and it's part of like that, along with Heaven's Gate, is kind of ends this whole like auteur period of Hollywood. But what's really funny is that One from the Heart, one of the stars of it is Natasha Kinski, who
Yes.
not only is she the star of the movie Paris, Texas, but her father is Klaus Kinski, who's the star of our second film.
There was a lot of fun stories about Klaus Kinski we'll get into.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into them. Yeah.
So, but what I think is so genius about Apocalypse Now is, I mean, Dennis Hopper's character, who you meet at the end, who's this fanatic about over Colonel Kurtz, Marlon Brando's character's philosophy, and he really sees the man as a god, and he's leading this big death cult. So you're really meant to think of this guy as a god, but then you meet him, and he's really just a guy spewing aphorisms like "if" is in the middle of the word "life," and I'm a sad soldier. I saw terrible things in war. it really humanizes and makes this behemoth small towards the end of the movie.
I mean, the Dennis Hopper, that's dialectics, man. That's dialectic physics. You can't land on a fraction, man. You can't land on 1/2 or 3/4.
That's dialectical warfare, man. When you're out there, you can't land on 1/8 of a. Yeah, he's so good.
Love and hate, peace and war.
But the mission of this whole movie that Willard is sent on is this guy went past his breaking point. He's strayed from the military mission here, and you got to go assassinate him. But as they make this journey up, each of the characters on the boats hits their own breaking point at some place in the movie. I think Willard, before the movie starts, that dance he's doing when he's drunk and going crazy in Saigon in the very, very first scene. Towards the end of the movie, Lance Johnson is doing that same dance on the boat while he's losing his mind too. And so you kind of, each of the characters hits their breaking point that we're told everyone has.
Yeah, that scene is great because the whole movie is about it's like if it's about anything, it's about how Vietnam, the war affects everybody involved, including the audience, right? Yeah. I think is a big thing about this movie because you're watching, when you watch the action, you get kind of pumped, and you go, oh wow, they're killing people, and it's bad, but you're getting the Ride of the Valkyrie scene with Kilgore is very much supposed to pump you up and supposed to be awesome, but they're murdering people and it's nonchalant, so the war affects everybody, including the viewer, the passive viewer of it, I think is one of the main points. And the Willard scene in the beginning is very much he can't adapt outside of he'd rather be in the jungle, sleeping, right? Because he can't adapt to home life or life in Saigon. He needs a mission, he's kind of going stir crazy. Yeah. Even in the hotel room. And fun fact that Martin Sheen was actually drunk during that scene. And it was his 38th birthday during that scene. And so he goes to the hotel and he gets absolutely super wasted. He's I was almost black out. And so when he breaks the mirror, he actually broke the mirror and cut his thumb. And he's they're trying to get him to cut. And he's no. And there's a point where Coppola in Hearts of Darkness is it was very dangerous because we thought Martin Sheen was going to fight Coppola. Yeah. And there's a lot of crazy stuff on this one. Martin Sheen said he was smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day when they asked him to do this movie because it was supposed to be Harvey Keitel. Harvey Keitel had to drop out. So they got Sheen, or he didn't have to drop out. I'm sorry. Coppola didn't like him in the role.
Yeah. It was pretty early on. He kind of didn't see Willard in Keitel.
They filmed a few scenes and shit.
There was 3 weeks of shooting. They shot for 3 weeks. And they wasted a lot of footage. Apparently, they had to reshoot all of it with Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen was I was older. I was 37 when they got me. I was smoking 3 packs a day. I was out of shape. He had a heart attack while filming.
Yeah.
At 38, which is oh god.
Yeah. I should also say so before Coppola had the rights to this film, Milius, when he originally got it set up at his studio, he's oh, I got the perfect guy to direct this. He's his name's George Lucas. And so for 4 years, George Lucas tries to develop this movie. And ultimately it was a hazard, a danger, because his vision of the film, he wanted to shoot it documentary style on 16 millimeter using real soldiers on location in Vietnam. And so they were yeah, that's not gonna work. That's kind of dangerous and shit. Lucas did make a Vietnam movie. It's called Star Wars. You should check it out. But yeah, no, this movie has a really interesting production history.
They also, the ending was completely different. They couldn't figure out the ending. Coppola didn't want to do because the John Milius ending was them fighting with guns and natives and choppers. It was a big action brawl, and they were spouting philosophical quips at each other and stuff. So that I really liked the change in ending. Coppola did kind of go crazy. This was like picked up by Coppola's new production company, Zoetrope, and he tried to this was their first movie. He said, I directed myself. He said, the biggest movie he ever directed to that point. He constantly felt like a failure. And, most interesting with Coppola as a filmmaker, and most of the time, like you hear this about it, it's like he funded a lot of the movie himself. He put up a lot of the funding. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, because he kind of like after this, he kind of like I said, One for the Heart is a bomb. He does The Outsiders, which is I watched that movie a lot as a kid. But then he has like Rumblefish, Cotton Club, Peggy Sue Got Married, Gardens of Stone, Tucker, A Man in His Dream, Godfather Part 3, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Jack. Like he does all these like very like either low budget or like just kind of studio pictures because he's just at this point because he had gone into so much debt that he's just trying to like stay above water. And of course, if you know Coppola, you know that like his story has a happy end because he like I don't know if he like bought it or what, but he has this winery. It's Coppola Wine or whatever, this vineyard or whatever, and he's made a shitload of money off of that. He like ended up selling his. He made a shitload of money and then ended up selling his stake in it to finance his newest, probably last film, Megalopolis or whatever. Which is, he was talking about it, 10 years ago when he came to my school. He was like, "Yeah, we're trying to get independent financing to do this movie." And I don't know if you guys have seen like Tetro or Twixt or Youth Without Youth, but he's made a few like very small budget like art films, I guess, in the 2000s. Not great.
Yeah, his wine's not that good either. I'm just gonna throw that out.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I haven't had his wine, but last year when I was watching The Conversation, I was texting my friend. I was like, "Oh, this movie rocks." The Conversation by Coppola, and he's like, "I don't know who Coppola is." He's like, "Is that the wine guy?" And I was like, I don't know if that's the first thing people know him as, but sure.
Yeah, I always like the joke that he's the father of famed director Sofia Coppola.
And father of Roman Coppola, who I have worked with personally.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot who it was, but somebody had a really funny tweet about like, Sophia's dad made a movie or something like that. Like some girl tweeted it and everyone got mad because they didn't think she was. People don't think that women are capable of humor on the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, Apocalypse Now, like I said, I love the beginning and end. I think like it's such a great like I said, bookmark or like spine to hold the movie together. I think there was this apparently wasn't true, but there was a rumor that at one point this movie was called The Psychedelic Soldier. And it definitely feels like that. It definitely feels like a bunch of hippies made a movie about Vietnam. Even though, like I said, Milius isn't a hippie, he's very much like a macho guy.
Well, it's funny because he makes a movie. I don't think he was in Vietnam, but he makes a movie about Vietnam. He's talking about it, like,
he had tried to volunteer, but he had asthma.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But at a fucking time where they were taking dead bodies to throw over there.
Hey man, that's his story,
Yeah,
I couldn't go fight in Vietnam because stubbed my toe and I was kind of limping when I walked into the enlistment office.
Yeah, that's horse shit. That's completely horse shit. Allegedly, that's a horse shit. That's a horse shit.
But yeah, I mean, I love a movie like this and like our next movie, a little less so the next one, where the morality of the characters is something you can't really think about or make sense of, when you're at home or in a movie theater because the surroundings and the environment that the movie takes place in really is just so otherworldly and beyond the pale that I think the scene that I love so much, the little line, is when Chef, the character from New Orleans, our beloved Saucier, he's reading a letter from his girlfriend back home, and she says, "I can't picture you in Vietnam. I can only picture you drinking beer and sitting on the couch watching TV." Yeah. And he starts laughing because you, as an audience member, and all the guys on the Navy boat couldn't picture that guy at
No.
home or in a kitchen. These guys are so changed by being in the war that they can only exist as themselves in this scenario anymore.
Yeah, I think the most impactful like scene of the film is the routine boat check where you realize they're all going crazy. Like,
Yeah.
where they go and he tells them, Willard tells them kind of like, "We'll skip it," and they're like, "It's protocol." He's like, "It doesn't matter. My mission takes priority." They go and they stop this Vietnamese boat to check it out, and he tells them to go there, and they're so agitated. He's like, "Let me check everything," and he goes to check this yellow thing. One of the ladies screams. They what is it?
She
Clean.
lunges for the basket, and Clean, played by Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah,
Yeah,
young, very young.
He was 14 when the movie started shooting, and then he was 18 by the time it was released.
Yeah, and so he blows them all away. They're all freaking out. They open it up. It's a puppy. They fight over who gets to keep the puppy. Lance, right, the California surfer guy, grabs it. And then they realize that she's still alive. They're like, "We need to take her to some of our allies." And then Willard just steps up and shoots her, and he's just like, "I told you not to stop. Keep going." Which is like, okay, yeah, that seems like that seems like something Willard would do. Yeah, that scene, and then of course, the Kilgore, right? His name's Kilgore with the Fly of the Valkyries, and he's trying to go and surf, and he's like, "This is the type of guy is not going to get a scratch." He's telling them, he's like, "Look at those waves when bombs are going off all around him." He just doesn't care. He's like, he feels invincible, and he is invincible.
He's a guy whose biggest qualm about blowing a village away with napalm is that it ruins the surf for 20 minutes.
And that's the famous line. Like, "I love this all napalm in the morning." Obviously, like oft quoted.
Charlie does surf. That's the other one.
I really like he's like he says start like the psyop or something. Start the
He says it's like Psy Battle Op or something.
Yeah, he's like started, and they played Wagner, like Fly the Valkyries, right? And it's a really cool scene. It apparently was the most like logistically challenging to shoot because there's a lot of moving parts. Obviously, they have all the helicopters
that helicopter shot across the battle where there's just, coordinating that scene must have been hell. There's so many people in that one shot. Multiple helicopters. They might have spliced stuff together, but still, that's an incredibly chaotic scene.
And the incredible thing about the helicopters cost so much money to like run. It was a loan from the Filipino government. They actually used the helicopters to go fight communists in the South, which is pretty interesting. Right? They're like, "Oh, the communists are 10 miles away. Let's," because that's like their entire fleet. Those helicopters that they use was like literally, and I think the most like interesting thing about that sequence is like you have this like extreme violence that like you as an audience member is kind of cheering for, right? Like I said, kind of like the film is not only talking about Vietnam War and how it affects like everybody and the characters, but it's about how it affects you, like the audience member, where the film is having a dialogue with you saying like, "This is really cool, isn't it?" But then like it stops being really cool when you see the up close like carnage of it, because like there's a guy with his leg blown off, and there's the girl that throws in the grenade, and there's a part where they're like, "Kill her," and they kill her, and you're like, "Hell yeah!" And then you're like, "Wait a minute, this is just a person defending their home," like they came here, they blew up this fucking village to surf, right? Like you have to have a really serious, deep conversation with yourself, and I think that's completely intentional.
Also really fun, the audience is actually in that scene. You get the guy with the camera sticking the camera in their faces and going, "Fight! Pretend you're fighting!
Oh,
don't
that's
look at the
Coppola.
camera."
That's Coppola,
yeah.
Which is incredible.
So you get this nod that like, we're filming this, we're watching this happen, we want them to be fighting. We don't want to pretend this is a movie. We want to pretend we're watching these people die.
Yeah.
Which is incredible, right? It's very rare that like a film talks like to the audience member so directly and like wants you to engage with it, not only as a film, but like as like the text itself, kind of like it wants you to engage with these like deep philosophical questions, because like you think like like you said, Travis, like the ending with Marlon Brando's Kurtz, right? Like there's all these deep philosophical like things that he's spouting, but it's like gobbledygook, but it's like sounds like even to the audience member, it sounds profound, right?
Yeah.
And he comes across at the end as just another human being who was corrupted by this terrible fucking war.
We
You know,
should.
he
I want to say like Colonel Kurtz was. They offered the part to Orson Welles at one point, who turned it down.
Orson Welles he was trying to do a Hearts of Darkness thing, and it
Yeah.
never got off the ground. He could never get it off the ground. So
Yeah,
did
one
it
of the
really-
great like lost movies or whatever was. Yeah, he never got to make. Yeah, he was trying to make it for a long time. That would have been interesting. I mean, Brando and like Orson Welles very similar in the later of life. You know, they both kind of ballooned.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
so interesting in the Hearts of Darkness documentary when he is like, I promised to get like Marlon Brando was going to get in shape for him, and he was so self conscious about being fat.
Yeah,
And so like that's Travis, you're talking about like him in Shadows. How that's really cool. He's in Shadows. You don't really see him that much, but that's a part of the. He was so ashamed of being fat.
they
He
just
didn't
had
want.
to do it. Yeah, they just had to shoot it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, and he was like, well, you know, there's many ways we can kind of play this, and Marlon Brando didn't want to play it any of those ways, and yeah, I think that he said he would read Heart of Darkness, and Francis Coppola like had a lot of conversations with him about it, and he was like, oh, this motherfucker hasn't read Heart of Darkness, right? Like, I mean, it's like a 100-page novella, right? Like, you can read that in an afternoon, but like Marlon Brando got paid $3 million for 3 weeks worth of work and couldn't even bother to read it or lose any weight, which is incredible. Like I said, and that's the best. He's the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it works with him as kind of a bald. You can kind of see a military guy behind under all the weight, under how he looks now. But I think he looks awesome for the part at the end of the movie. It works so well.
Yeah, I mean, he's bloated. He's the king of the. He's like a god, right? Like he's very, like you said, he's very much like a god. And it's interesting. I really like the metatextual narrative about like saying like, like convincing or convicting someone of murder in Vietnam is insane, right? And he tells him he's like, you're a, and this is actually what I heard from like my father like fought in Vietnam, and he kind of talks about it a little, like he talked about it a little bit like back in the day, and he was, most people who were like wanting to be soldiers in Vietnam always said that like the generals were clowns, and he talks about like Kurtz kind of says like he's like, are you an assassin? He's like, I'm a soldier. And he goes, no, you're neither. He's like, you're an errand boy sent by grocery store clerks to collect the bill, which I thought was very, very intense and very like how most like of these like soldiers who wanted to stay soldiers and be soldiers felt about the generals. Cause you hear like vets talk about Vietnam, like the ones who are really gung ho about it. And they were like, we were fighting that war with like one hand tied behind our back, a lot of times. Yeah. So that's just from like, that's personal. I'm not talking about like, I don't agree with that statement or anything. I'm just saying that like personally, I've heard that from people who fought in Vietnam. So
is it Cambodia or Laos that there were like more bombs dropped on that country in a year in Vietnam than were dropped in Europe in World War II?
Cambodia, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's where Kurtz is too, is in Cambodia.
Yeah, that's where they moved past up the river from Vietnam into Cambodia.
So I have to say too, like a guy who plays Metal Gear Solid and then watches Apocalypse Now, I'm getting very Metal Gear Solid vibes from this,
Kurtz especially when 3 different characters put on the face paint, they all take their turn playing Big Boss.
Yeah, I was like, definitely Hideo Kojima loves this movie. Obviously, he's a big film bro. But yeah, I was like, this movie, like the Kurtz being like he's got his own little outer heaven there, and in Apocalypse Now, which is their compound, right, with all our soldiers of fortune, and he's like waging a forever war, which is very Metal Gear Solid. Like you can tell that, like when you can tell if Vietnam was ever over, he'd be like, let's keep fighting, guys. Like, let's start another war, because that's all they are soldiers,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, final thoughts. Like I said, 5 stars for me. Like like I said, Milius isn't like a liberal hippie guy, but he happened to make one of the great anti-war films just by showing how fucked up everything could be. Definitely feels like a movie, like I said, made by a bunch of like hippies who grew up at the time and who like had strong feelings about the war. I don't think this movie can get made now. I don't think anyone would have like the artistic freedom to do what Francis did. I think a big part of that is like because of this movie. Like it was such a chaotic experience to like shoot it, and it came out great, but like that's after like how many cuts, and like it still has this like weird history and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what are you guys? Last thoughts?
Final thoughts for me. I like I said, I think this does. It really matters which cut you watch. Again,
Yeah,
like. I think this movie, like the thing about this movie is like it's a movie that is unfettered, that needs the limitations that's placed on it. Coppola was very, meticulous when making this movie. Like you can see in Hearts of Darkness. He's very much stressed out, very meticulous with regards to everything, and you need that kind of like restraint.
yeah,
And I think that's where it shines, right? And again, I think the dual thing is where Marlon Brando, because he was so tough to work with, he would only give them 3 weeks. That he was forwarded $1 million. He got paid $1 million a week to film his scenes, and Marlon was so tough to work with, according to Coppola, where he was like,
yeah.
I just had to film and like let him talk, and then figure out stuff that like he could say, like piece it together earlier, or piece it together later. Because like they were also working with a like an ending that wasn't necessarily finished. So it was a lot of moving things. But like I said, yeah, definitely watch the theatrical cut. I think if it's a first
Yeah,
time
I
watch for
agree.
you, you should definitely watch the theatrical cut. If it's a third time watch, you should definitely watch the theatrical cut. Like I said, I did not like the final cut at all.
Yeah.
It was too bloated. It's very bloated, very boring, very dragged to the end. Like both kind of versions drag towards the end, but like the theatrical version was a little more palatable because you didn't go from like the to the French from the French plantation. You kind of. It kept going.
Yeah.
But yeah, final thoughts. Final cut 2 stars. Theatrical cut 4. That's my rating.
Travis, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think in terms of subs from something similar to the final cut, which is that the sort of French colonial aspect of the movie, that Coppola obviously had something he wanted to say. It gets bogged down in a lot of history that doesn't relate to the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And I think that scene could work somewhere even if it was cut down earlier in the movie. It comes at a point where the progression of insanity and of tension it is halted, and all of a sudden it feels strange and like you've gone back in time to see them sitting at a dinner table.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I agree. I think it's better done without the kind of weird romance between Willard and the French woman. But amazing movie. I just think this movie is so gorgeous from start to
Yeah.
finish. It's a real pleasure to watch. All the acting is incredible. Martin Sheen is incredible in it. And yeah, like I said, it's a very involved movie for me. I feel like I get really emotionally tied into it every time I watch it. So I'll keep watching it until I die, probably.
Yeah, same. It's a visual treat. Definitely takes you on a journey. With that said, that's the end of the first part of our podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second half of the podcast. Part 2 of our double feature. We've got 1972's Aguirre, The Wrath of God, written and directed by Werner Herzog, starring Klaus Kinski. These guys had a very interesting relationship. I had seen this movie before. I love it. It's one of my favorites. It's just like, it's pure Herzog. It's it's just like I don't know. It's primal. It's man versus nature. It's everything I love in a movie. Travis, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you feel about this movie?
Yeah, so this movie's fun both on the screen and behind the scenes. It's
Yeah,
obviously the first collaboration between Herzog and Klaus Kinski. And yeah, I mean, legendary in its telling of the conquistadors looking for El Dorado, but it
yeah,
also, it's very winking at the camera. These guys are just these guys. The characters are all really stupid in a modern, in a modern perspective. They're all
yeah,
just these credulous losers who are killing themselves in the jungle, not knowing what they're doing. And so it's very cool in the way it both mythologizes Aguirre and these adventurers, but also diminishes them. And so I think it's a really, really cool watch.
yeah,
Uh, the whole story of the production, which we'll get into, is so funny because
yeah,
I mean, everything from Herzog writing this script in what 2 or 3 days, and then losing half of the script because someone threw up on it, and then the money that was supposed to be, they shot the movie in English, and then the money that was supposed to be for sort of producing the audio was stolen and absconded with, and so they ended up having to redub it in German, and there's all these fun stories from behind the scenes. This movie was just chaos from start to finish, and
yeah,
the shooting of the movie really parallels the plot of Aguirre looking for El Dorado.
yeah,
So
definitely.
so it's beautiful. It's hard. Both times that I've watched this movie, I've had trouble where the sort of the
Get into
quality.
him because he popped up in a lot of movies that I've seen. Like just great. He's yeah. He's not a very good person, I should say as well.
No,
I'm gonna like yeah. He's a very bad guy.
he's very screwy. Yeah, the one story I find funny from this movie especially is, because they were in the jungle. They shot this movie chronologically
Yeah,
because Herzog literally wanted the production to parallel the adventure.
yeah,
And so one night, Kinski just goes crazy because some of the other crewmen are playing cards, and he just starts shooting a gun into their tent and ends
yeah.
up shooting off the guy's finger. And it's
Uh,
just it's awesome. It's awesome.
Matt, what did you think of this movie?
Yeah, so this one, like, when I posted about like 2 out of 4, again, like I'd only seen the final cut of Apocalypse Now,
Yeah,
and then I watched this movie right after, and so I was like, damn, this movie's a lot better than Apocalypse Now. And then I went back and watched the theatrical version, didn't think it was a lot better.
yeah.
This one's a 3 for me.
Okay. Yeah, it's a 4 for me.
Yeah, I liked it. It's like one of those, like, the way I describe them, and this isn't a dig at all because I think they're great. I call it a fucked up little European movie.
Yeah,
They're like little. It's so like they're all these actors in these dumbass costumes, right? Which is, again, all this is talking about love, right? This is all coming from a place of love. It's actors in these dumbass little costumes running around in like mud with like a very DIY like there's a part where they're like all in the mud and they get the cannon stuck in the mud, and like all these actors are just like up to their fucking knees and in like muck and mud, and there's like mud on the camera with like water. It looks like someone's walking with them with the can, like it doesn't it doesn't look like a movie at this point. It looks like one of the one of the guys is walking with a camera like filming these little fucked up European guys, like you
believe,
know
believe this is one of the movies that was filmed on a little handheld camera that Herzog stole from a film school.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's so DIY. It's so like fucked up and like weird. The thing, like, one of the reasons I love these like old European movies like more and more is there's always like a funny little guy who's just like rolling in the mud, who's like a clown who always wants to eat fucking dirt pies or whatever. And like it's just kind of like what this, like, they're all in these little costumes doing their play in the Amazon rainforest, and it's
the
pretty
co-
great. I liked it a lot. I liked how fucked up everybody is. How like like you said, Travis, like from a modern day perspective, how fucking stupid everybody is. like it's like epic tale that like they're all just bumbling and fucking dying, and there's the movie like ends with monkeys all over the boat and then everyone dying. It's incredible.
The Emperor of El Dorado drinks river water and shits himself to death.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. Like
Yeah.
Aguirre they set up like a government. He's like, I'm the Emperor of El Dorado. It's like, okay. He's like, oh, we have more land than Spain. He's like, well, we gotta fucking land this boat. The shit sucks. We're dying, dude.
Well, yeah, when they pick the emperor, they're like, oh, let's pick the fattest, dumbest, richest guy.
Yeah, and I obviously like Aguirre picks him because he's like easy to manipulate and
Yeah.
whatever, right? And then like I read that this was based off of a lot of like different conquistador stories, right?
Yeah, so Aguirre is a real guy, and Carvajal, the monk or the missionary, those are both real guys. This is not a story from Carvajal's diary, nor is this a story about Aguirre, the real conquistador. This is totally fictionalized, but
They're like,
those
no,
are
they're
real names.
Aguirre did. There's a part in the movie, so like the ending is incredible, right? Like he's on the boat. Everyone's fucking dead. They're all like dead on this boat. The monkeys are like all over everybody.
the monkey, like, I don't know why the monkeys always freaked me out. Like every time I
It's
watch this
creepy.
movie, I'm like, yeah, the monkeys like just like because at first like he's like you see them, he's like kicking them off the raft and they're like swimming, and then you see them like crawling on them. It's fucking weird. Like it scares me.
And then
Yeah,
Aguirre's
they're like
walking around.
flies, yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna go through somewhere. I don't remember where he says. He's like, I'm gonna go and attack like Portugal and then like attack Spain and like all this stuff, right? Like he's like, I'm gonna go through here. Apparently, the real Aguirre actually did that. He was a conquistador who he took control of a South American government. I don't know, like when they were having, you know what I mean? Like it was like a Spanish colonial outpost. He was like, so he was sent to find El Dorado, which is real, but he actually did do all the stuff that the Aguirre in this movie says at the end. He goes and sails up and immediately gets like fucking destroyed by the ground. Like they immediately like, capture him and kill him. Like, call him a heathen or whatever. Yeah. This movie rules. It's a little fucked up. Like it's a little fucked up European movie.
So I want to say, like, Klaus Kinski, he's been in a lot of westerns. He was in like for a few dollars more. Bullet for the General is one I've seen. He always just shows up as like a random German guy in the posse. But if he's in it, it's gonna be a fucked up movie. But I wanted to read this paragraph from his Wikipedia. Kinski's work with Werner Herzog brought him international recognition. They made 5 films together: Gary, Wrath of God, Wojciech, Nosferatu, Fitzcarraldo, and Cobra Verde. Despite their collaborations, Herzog had threatened, on occasion, to murder Kinski. In one incident, Kinski was said to have been saved by his dog who attacked Herzog as he crept up to supposedly burn down the actor's house. Herzog had refused to comment on his numerous other plans to kill Kinski. However, he did pull a gun on Kinski, or at least threatened to do so, on the set of Aguirre, Wrath of God after the actor threatened to walk off the set.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah, I believe
Herzog's insane.
I believe Herzog pulled the gun and threatened to kill both Kinski and himself.
Oh yeah. It's in there's a movie, it's like, what's it called, like My Best Friend or something? Like
I'm not familiar.
There's like a documentary about their it's called My Best Friend. It's a documentary by Werner Herzog about his relationship with Kinski. I need to watch it because I knew about this movie for like a long time. I just never got around to seeing it. But yeah, it's called My Best Friend. And it's just a documentary about a guy he tried to kill.
I wonder because like I read that this movie did pretty well and like it played in like a lot of art house cinemas. It did really well among the art house cinemas and critics. It's interesting that these like little movies sneak by. Like I've never seen or heard of this movie. This is the first Herzog I've ever seen. I know of Herzog because of like people posting videos of him being like absolutely fucking like insane.
He rocks.
Yeah, and then I know him as like the voice of bad guys and stuff.
I think he was in the first episode of The Mandalorian.
Yeah,
he was in Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. I've met him personally. I have a picture with him. I'm trying to get it framed. I might get it framed this week.
You got to, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, because like
he
I
made
met.
Bad
Yeah, he's
Lieutenant.
awesome.
He made Bad Lieutenant Protocol New Orleans.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
And then, but yeah, he takes these really shitty, just like, yeah, ambiguously Eastern European villain roles, like in Jack Reacher. And,
Yeah.
yeah, he's in Rick and Morty. I mean, he takes like these dumbass roles, and he's just awesome.
He's like, I don't care that you are. He's always, yeah, it's great.
His
It's
whole
great.
thing is like
I
man
love
versus
the Baby
nature.
Yoda.
Yeah, he was like the first villain on like the Baby Yoda movie or
Yeah.
show. I mean,
So yeah, my brother wanted me to recommend to you guys Fitzcarraldo, another
okay.
Kinski Herzog joint, and I believe I haven't confirmed this story, but apparently he and Kinski fought so much on the set of that movie that at the end of it, these sort of indigenous people that he hired, to move this boat and do all this stuff in the movie, they came to Herzog after the end of the shooting and asked if Herzog wanted them to kill Kinski, and Herzog evidently considered it and then said no, thank you.
That's crazy. Yeah, is Herzog's other movies little fucked up European joints? Because like,
not well.
They vary pretty
Like
widely.
yeah, like Bad Lieutenant Protocol New Orleans is just like a straight up. It's a remake of Bad Lieutenant starring Nicolas Cage. It's like
It's amazing.
and psychedelic. Yeah, it's awesome. He made this movie called Rescue Dawn with Christian Bale. It was one of the movies Christian Bale did in between the first and second Batman movies. It's based on Herzog's own documentary called Little Dieter Must Fly. Yeah, it's about a guy who like escapes prison in some war.
Herzog is interesting, like as a creative, because he reminds me. Because again, I haven't. This is the only Herzog thing I've seen. I've never read anything that he's wrote. Like I've only seen interviews and stuff. But the way people talk about him, he sounds like my guy, like Pasolini. Like
Yeah.
Pasolini is like really into like these little fucked up European movies. He writes poetry and he writes criticism, and he's like kind of like or Lynch for that matter. Lynch like really
he's very much like Lynch.
Yeah, okay. And he's one of those artists that he has a vision that has to be executed in the way that it's in his head, or else it's not his vision. One of the stories I love from his Nosferatu movie is he needed it to be filmed in this little town Delft. I'm probably mispronouncing that, up in the Netherlands, and he said no other town's going to work. But he needed a scene in the movie where rats just swarm all the way across the town square. And so he went to the city and said, I need to do this. And they said, we just this year cleaned out our sewers and got rid of our rat problem. So no way in hell are we releasing thousands of rats in our town square. Yeah. And he was like, well, I can't shoot this in any other town. So he ended up arguing with them and got them to concede. And they ended up letting him just release rats into their town right after they had gotten rid of their infestation. I mean, this is a guy that he embodies the megalomania that's in all of his movies. I mean, he is like he's a total artist, and he's incredible for it.
Interesting.
Grizzly Man, if Grizzly Man is a high recommend because like it's like a 2000s documentary. It's like very easy to watch, but like you kind of get who Herzog is watching that movie because like. There's a lot of great videos, especially on YouTube, of like him like espousing his philosophy. Like I said, his whole thing is like nature is this like unconquerable thing, and man's whole history is just this like story of like trying to like tame the beast,
Yeah.
And like fighting nature, and it's like ultimately an unwinnable battle.
And he's against speaking French, apparently. I can't find that clip, but that's one of the best clips. That was before I even knew who Herzog was. Someone was like, this is Herzog again. And I'm like, all right, let me watch whoever this is. And it was like, that's when I was like, I need to check this guy out, and never checked him out. He's like, I detest speaking French. Like, when I was in Africa, they put the gun to my head and asked me to speak French, and I would refuse. I'd rather him shoot me. He speaks French too, which is crazy.
Oh man.
Yeah. German guy knows English. Like, yeah, no, he's awesome. He's like I said, he's like, he's very funny too. Like, Like I think that kind of gets like for a
He's very
guy.
German.
Well,
Very
yeah, he's
German.
very yeah, very
Yeah, I mean that video cropped up this week that we watched of him getting shot. Where he was in the middle of an interview. He gets shot by like an air
yeah.
rifle right in his
Uh,
stomach.
my
And
favorite
Because of
one.
nothing but it.
My favorite video is like it's been like animated on YouTube, but essentially like he tells the story of like some guy crashes in front of him and
oh
he pulls
yeah,
over and goes and he's like and it was he goes I didn't know it at the moment, but it was Joaquin Phoenix. And he like saves Joaquin Phoenix from
Pulls out
like
of
a
a
fucking
burning
car.
car.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
he
sick.
rocks, man. He's like I said, I'm so cool. Like I'm so glad I got a picture with him because basically there was this like restaurant in between down the block where I live. There was a 7-Eleven and like a washateria, and stuck in between was this like random Eastern European restaurant. I'd never been to it. I'd never known anyone who had gone to it. But like I'm like driving and I see him there having a cigarette. And so like I pull over and it's like forever to get parking because there's no space. And I like run up to him and I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry, but like I just really respect you and I really need I've never asked for a picture in all my time. Like I met a lot of people in LA. I never asked for a picture. This is the only time." And I was like, I'd be really honored. And so like when I gave my phone to his friend who he was with, his like he's a younger German guy, could have been a director, actor, whatever, but I like
Sure.
gave him my phone and he was like, "Try not to tremble." Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Incredible. Yeah, that's
That's
great.
sick.
You're like, excuse me, are you famed actor director Werner Herzog from the video of you getting shot?
Yeah.
Hey, you're the guy from that video.
I saw you
you're,
eat
the,
your shoe one time.
you're the guy
Yeah.
who was in the army in Africa, and they were going to shoot you in the head if you didn't speak French, and you would rather be shot in the head than speak French.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah,
lot of
I think
questions I wanted to ask him.
I think I read an interview with you in a skateboarding magazine.
Incredible, dude.
Hey
Yeah,
man, you're
I
really
was.
fucked up, right?
I think how like it's funny because like this is the first time. Obviously, he's a huge figure. I guess because like this is the first time on the pod where when we're talking about the movie, we're more interested about the director. Like
He's amazing.
he is. Like I think he is the. Like I said in Aguirre, like it's a fucked up little European movie, and it's like that's what Herzog is a fucked up little European guy.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
he's very fucked up.
his movies, I feel like, and this is true of any art, but I think especially in Herzog's case, it just his art embodies him and like his own mental state so well.
Mm.
But yeah, about Aguirre, I agree, Matt. The costumes I absolutely love in this movie. From like the colorful, indigenous ponchos that they have a lot of the Peruvians enslaved, and they're bringing them on this journey, and they're
Yeah,
wearing these beautiful. I don't know the right terms for it, but these knit
ponchos.
clothing. Yeah,
I'm
and then
Mexican. I'm just gonna say that.
yeah, sure. And then the Kunki Aguirre's armor that fits probably as awkwardly as armor would fit a guy that hasn't had a bath
Yeah,
in 2 months and 6 months and he's just
it feels real. It looks very real. Like to
yeah.
me, it's like like that's probably what it looked like.
Yeah, I think that's the fun of it. It's like if these guys had a 35 millimeter camera, this is what you'd see.
And I should say like the whole like handheld thing, like it's a style that I feel like has been emulated a lot. Like I was watching this movie and I like when it got into like handheld mode, I don't know, I just maybe like The Revenant maybe or
Oh
there's
yeah,
another
definitely.
Yeah.
The Revenant is like probably the most like because they make that movie like very prestige or whatever. But
Yeah.
like really, it's just if they would have made that movie as like a little fucked up art movie in the woods or whatever, it would have been infinitely
Yeah.
more interesting.
Yeah.
And it would have been this movie. It would have been awesome.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude. We need more like little fucked up little costume woods with your buddies movies.
Yeah.
Like
You go live in the woods while you're filming it. I mean, yeah, okay, method acting's annoying where you're like being an asshole because you're playing one, but like, yeah, go live in the fucking jungle if you're filming a jungle movie.
just have like costumes, like roll in the fucking mud. Like.
Yeah.
Bring the camera, have like crazy like stories of people stealing shit, or like you shooting somebody or whatever. Like That's what we're missing. It's like very much a lost time of like filmmaking where like everything's got to be, studio approved and studio budgeted or whatever,
Insured.
Yeah, and you can't have like this weird little fucked up mud European movie anymore. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Like that's what I was kind of saying. Like, again, like the joke, the guy sees a Pasolini film and getting very Pasolini vibes from this. But like, I really did. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like those old, like 50s, 60s, like Italian, like European movies where it's like about like everyone's fucking poor and they're all in the street and they're all like, kind of DIYing it, and it's about like if it's a period piece, they go into these fucking hills, where no one's around, where you can't see the power poles right around the corner, and they film this thing, and it kind of looks like a documentary. It's kind of, the camera's there in the muck with them. It's very interesting film. Very, and it's also, like I said, it's very interesting that it caught on too. Like that's how many of those types of films catch on?
I want to say it was a theater in New York. I might have this wrong, but there's a theater somewhere in America, I believe, that played, or maybe it was Paris, that played this movie for 14 months. It had over a year theatrical run after it came out. I mean, this movie is really loved in the art world.
Would never happen,
Yeah.
No.
Scorsese has it on his like top 30 foreign films that a young filmmaker needs to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because like you said, it inspires Apocalypse Now. Like Coppola and them talk about that, like while they're in Hearts of Darkness, right? He's like the boat segments are definitely inspired by Aguirre. I mean, there's like that, like, and things just keep going wrong. You can kind of tell.
And they make these little adventures onto every now and then. There are these landmarks in the movie where they go on land and something fucked up happens to them where they need to get back on the boat.
Yeah, and then things fuck up on the boat all the time, and they're like, it's a movie. It's very thematically. You did a good pick this week, Travis. Very thematically similar in both the fact that it's about on a boat, it's about a greater, power going and clashing with an indigenous culture, like the indigenous people, besides like the characters who are already slaves are very much like, nameless people that you don't really see. They get like every once in a while will pop up and kill one of the boat members and stuff. And it's just like this degradation of this expedition that like is going nowhere.
Yeah. The silent arrows and spears coming from the trees is recreated very well in Apocalypse Now.
I should say also, so to obtain the monkeys used in the climatic sequence, Herzog paid several locals to trap 400 monkeys. He paid them half in advance and was to pay the other half upon receipt. The trappers sold the monkeys to someone in LA or Miami, and Herzog came to the airport just as the monkeys were being loaded to be shipped out of the country. He pretended to be a veterinarian and claimed that the monkeys needed vaccinations before leaving the country. Abashed, the handlers unloaded the monkeys. Herzog loaded them into his Jeep and drove away, used them in the one shot they were required for, and released them afterwards into the jungle.
Hell yeah, dude. That's incredible.
So sick.
He's a cool guy.
That's so awesome.
That's crazy, dude.
But
yeah, Herzog, it's all like, it's so funny because all the stories that you guys told, I had no clue about any of them, but all the stories that you guys told, it's like Herzog's like a little guy who's being bamboozled. He has to like Herzog's like this, the making of a movie of Herzog could be like a movie in and of itself. Like Herzog sounds like a character who like has to go through all these like Hanna-Barbera-esque like hijinks to get the movie made. It's like, I can't. I'm sorry, but I'm a veterinarian. I need to check out the monkeys.
This week, I will. Yeah.
Matt, like to get what you were talking about earlier, I feel like just as the age of adventure and exploration and conquering is over, so is the age of making movies like that.
Making good movies, yeah.
Oh, for sure, dude, for sure. Yeah, you can't make like
a life story like that from making a movie anymore. I don't know. Maybe you can.
Yeah, you can't. Again, you can't like really have these like larger than life. Most of these directors are kind of like NPR, like whisperer guys. Like
you don't get a guy like Sam Peckinpah who would like get drunk before 9 a.m. and point his gun at these actors.
Yeah, like
That's
you
the whole
don't.
reason I wanted to be a director, though, was to do shit like that.
I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't want to be like fucking Orson Welles and just beef with everybody? I mean, Jesus, my God, like, wouldn't that be a great existence? Like, being a professional hater and making your little fucked up movies would be so good, dude. Just being like, I met the man. I detest him. Like,
Yeah.
Well, there are a few scenes I want to talk about from Aguirre, but one more thing about Herzog and Kinski, because they had met when Kinski was a wannabe actor, and he stayed with Herzog for a few months, and they hated each other the whole time because Kinski was insane, and I think it just goes to show that they absolutely hated each other's guts and couldn't stand to be around each other, and yet they kept coming back to each other for these movies. I mean, I think it goes to show how good of an artist both of them are. That they realized that their relationship together created something that was beyond like them enjoying, each other or enjoying working together. They realized that they were able to birth something really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen Kinski in anything. I might have seen him in something. I probably saw him in something weird or whatever. But yeah, I didn't know who he was that much. I did see today. I was like shocked that it just popped up. But if someone was like had a picture and it's like, yeah, it's really fucked up that like Klaus Kinski, like one of the most fucked up looking humans, could possibly produce like his daughter, like whatever her name is.
Oh yeah, Natasha.
Natasha, yeah.
Natasha, yeah, she's like a model and she's in Cat People, right? And there's a funny story with
Yeah.
her where she talks about she has sex with all the directors she works with. It was her story, and she had sex with Paul Schrader, and Schrader like fell in love with her, right?
He was
Like they had,
stalking her.
yeah, they had sex a couple times. He like bought her chocolates and shit. And so yeah, he stalks her, and he like was gonna propose marriage, and then she's like, Paul, I have sex with every single one of my directors, and it was really hard with you. I was like, damn.
Yeah. Man, he's kind of simp.
But yeah, so the two scenes that I absolutely love in Aguirre are because it's that feeling I get watching this movie of these legends being taken down a peg, of it really feeling like you're viewing history while standing behind the conquistador, and it's one when Don Fernando, the man who they make the king of El Dorado, and he's a fat lard and he's totally milk toast, but he's sitting there in front of a blank sheet of paper, and he's drawing a map of they're floating down the Amazon River, and he's drawing a map of just the Amazon jungle in Peru, and he goes, "This is our land, and we have it conquered, and it's bigger than Spain." Well, they can't even take two steps onto land without getting shot by arrows and falling through trees. And he's sitting there claiming this land, having no idea what it looks like, no idea how he would even start to conquer it. And it's just this beautiful, taking him down that Herzog does. And the same scene is done, or the same effect is had for me when they're being shot at with arrows on the river, and Aguirre says, "Well, fire back. Aim at anything. Just start firing." And the camera cuts to this wide shot. You're viewing them. They barely take up any space on the Amazon River, and their big cannon and musket are like the sounds are like, all of a sudden they're not carrying these big guns. They're not firing these huge cannons and conquering. They're just these guys with these little cap guns, like. Doing nothing, just plinking into the forest, into this giant, unconquerable land. I think it's just this beautiful, beautiful paradigm that exists between the legend and the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the final scene, like I said, where the boat is complete, like people are dead, like his daughter's dead. She got struck by it. He goes and like grabs her, and there's like an arrow through her, and they're all like all of them are just like slumped over, and there's some of them are covered in the monkeys, and like the boat's covered, half sunk, covered in the monkeys, and he's walking around exhausted, and he's got like his sword, and he's like dropping, and he's talking about all the stuff that he's gonna do. He's gonna go take over Spain. He's got like all these, aspirations that won't happen in the movie. Like he's dying, and he like passes out. He falls over, and I'm assuming he dies, right?
Yeah.
And At least that's a safe assumption, is that he dies, and it's incredible. It's like, damn, like all this, the thing that we like the entire time we watched, right? All this stuff happened, amounted to, which I think is a very powerful message. It amounted to nothing. You know, he's nothing. They're nothing. Nothing really happened. They just kind of suffered and then eventually died off.
Yeah, they
Which
built a raft and then starved on it.
which is very much like you were saying, the man versus nature. I mean, like nature was the thing that killed them. Like they couldn't conquer, nature. They just kind of, I mean, even though the guys who were stuck on the raft, like the other raft that got stuck across the river, they died. Um, and and it was a result of the current working against them, and that can happen, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
So, good movie.
Yeah, like you said, Aguirre's final plan is to get this real like galleon down that's from the top of the treetops. That's very likely a hallucination. And his plan is to get this boat down somehow and sail it to Mexico and take Mexico from Cortez. And even the original screenplay, the ending was supposed to be their raft going out into the Pacific Ocean and getting caught in a riptide there. But no, the movie just ends with them all starving to death and getting shot by arrows.
I'm taking over my monkeys.
Yeah. You're right, Steven. Like that's so it's pretty scary. The monkeys are very scary.
Yeah,
There's
man.
so many of them.
Bad vibes, dude. There's too many.
Yeah,
I don't
they're
like
little
seeing that many
flies.
monkeys in the same place. Those fuckers
That many
bite.
of anything, dude. Like it's just insane. And those monkeys are little fucked up looking monkeys. They're all crazy.
They got bad intentions,
Yeah, they're there to fuck shit up. They're definitely there. They're gonna eat the corpses for sure, dude.
That's what they're waiting for.
Yeah, they're just chilling.
So, final thoughts. Like I said, I love this movie. It's a 4 for me. Like you said, it's a fucked up little movie. It's a weird European movie. I think it's very influential. Like, for as fucked up and as little as it is, it's still like, it's like very, very much like must see. For anyone who wants to make movies. Like I said, I still feel like it gets copied and like kind of like just I think it's very influential. Like a lot of movies steal from it, basically. And yeah, it's has a great reputation. Like I said, it takes the whole Heart of Darkness thing with the twist here. Instead of Vietnam is the conquistadors, and yeah, I think it's like you said, it the whole thing is like them being like corrupted by power and just like how stupid they look, like ultimately, because they're looking like they make it pretty clear in the text in the beginning that like this is all just some made up shit that they just made up to like fuck with them, basically.
Yeah, it was a red herring from the very start.
Yeah, so like the whole time they're just it's all bullshit anyway. So yeah, I loved it. What about you guys?
Yeah, go ahead, Travis.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, we got it cut from our last pod last week, but I don't like rating movies on the star scale. I do it on Letterboxd because it kind of forces you to. but so I wouldn't feel comfortable giving this a rating, but I think it's such a pleasure to watch. Some of the shots of the Amazon are so cool because it feels like you're really, really there.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's a set. It doesn't feel like super, coordinated and choreographed. It's just a fun, really visceral movie. It's really down in the dirt, like you said, Matt. And yeah, it makes me, I don't know, it makes me feel a different way about history every time I watch a movie like this. It makes me feel like I can think about historical events in a different way. So I love it. Herzog's great. Kinski is such a fucked up looking guy. He's always fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah, my final thoughts, like I said, because if Apocalypse Now, like the theatrical cut's a 3, the final cut's a 2. I rate this theatrical cut's a 4. Final cut's a 2. This is a 3. 3.5. I like my little fucked up European movies. It's not the best fucked up little European movie I've seen, but I love it. It's like kind of in the dirt. Like I said, very grounded. They're all in their silly costumes. They're all doing this little play out in the Amazon. Yeah, I thought I was like really, and I kind of undersold it when I talked about it, but I was very, very wowed by the ending. Just that it was like how pointless and fruitless it was, which it was. Like, I mean, the quest for El Dorado, right? Like, is very, it's mythical. It's very made up, right? Just kind of like you said, to fuck with them, to throw them off the trail. And ultimately, like, it's about this guy's hubris. It's about all of their hubrises, and they kind of get taken down a peg, and it rules. Yeah, little monkeys taking over the boat. Aguirre dying while thinking he's still going to be the emperor of everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my final thoughts.
Cool. And with that being said, thanks Travis for being our guest this week again. We greatly appreciated your picks. Like you said, we really liked them. It's a really fun watch. It's a fun experience in general. Yeah, if there's anything you want to plug or go for it.
Thanks for having me on. It's been fun. Thanks for letting me postpone you guys a day because of my scheduling, but I'm really glad you liked both the movies. Matt, I was worried about your tweet. I was worried I was gonna have to fight you on Apocalypse Now.
Everyone was, man. I was worried that I was gonna have to fight myself on Apocalypse Now. Thank God I watched the movie twice in 2 days.
Yeah, I'm glad you pushed through. That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having me on. I know my brother Austin, Super Hash Bro on Twitter, he's gonna want credit because he said Apocalypse Now is also a good. He had said right before, Matt, that you said you hadn't seen it, that it was a good double feature for Aguirre. So here's your shout out, Austin. That's my plug.
Sweet. So before we leave, though, we have to tease next week's episode. Travis, I know you won't be here, but if you want to stick around to make me feel old about my picks, or whatever, that's cool. Matt, I know you're excited to hear my new picks, right? Like,
I'm very excited.
Okay, because I haven't picked in a while. I feel, the thing about having guests on is like, you don't get to pick as much, but it makes it more special,
For sure.
So with that being said, next week's theme is gonna be my influential '90s, right? What I mean by that is, first up, we have a movie. These are both &90s movies. Both of these movies came out before you were born, Travis. That's why I wanted to get your opinion. I think one of these movies might have been was actually made before you were born as well, Matt. Yeah, these are very '90s movies. So the first one I wanted to start out with is 1993's Dazed and Confused. This is a movie that I've seen more than any other movie in existence. Like, I've just watched it more times than any other movie. It's extremely influential movie to me. Like, when I found out you haven't seen it, Matt, I was like, oh, fuck, I gotta get him to watch this movie. Like,
perfect.
Because, like, you like vibes-based cinema, right?
That's what our entire podcast is about, baby.
Exactly. So this movie is, like, the ultimate vibes-based movie to me. And, like, I feel like when you see it, like, I have high hopes. Not trying to influence you one way or the other, but I also have like very tenuous personal connections to both of these movies. But yeah, I'll explain later. But yeah, first we're starting out with 1993's Dazed and Confused, which, look, it's a very cool movie. It's a very like film bro movie. It's like, it's got the approval. So for my second movie, I wanted to go with a movie that isn't generally accepted as a good movie. Like, it's kind of cringe, honestly, but I wanted to be honest, and I wanted to show like my cringe side, I guess, and like be fair and like not try to look cool. Basically, like I want to be like, hey, here's one cool thing that I liked, but here's another thing that I liked that isn't very cool. With that being said, our second film is going to be 1995's Mallrats, written and directed by Kevin Smith. I was a huge Kevin Smith guy back in the day, man. This movie, again, I've seen it many a time. rewatch it all the time. I have the Blu-ray, the new Arrow Video Blu-ray. Like I said, it's not genuinely accepted as a good movie, but my thing is, I've always felt like this movie is like a great time capsule of the '90s. Like, for better or worse, this is real. This feels like the '90s to me. And so like, if you go and watching it, not expecting it to be like a good movie, just more like I said, it's more just both of these movies are about vibes. They're about the '90s. They're about like I said, still these are both movies that are really like personal to me. I really want you to see them, basically.
Perfect, dude.
Two good '90s movies right there.
Yeah, the one of the reasons we started this podcast was like I had not seen, I have like some blind spots and stuff, and I'm very glad that the past couple of double features are things that I haven't seen. So I'm very stoked and excited to dive into both of these. I haven't seen either of these. I've heard nothing but talk about both of these, whether that's good or bad.
Yeah, like I said, Dazed and Confused is the one that I feel confident that like you'll enjoy and you'll have a good time. Mallrats, it's like we're edging into like bad movie territory almost, but like I don't know. I think it also gets a bad rap. I also think it's a very influential movie. Like I feel like when you watch this movie, like you'll see the opening credits and you'll be like, yeah, I'm in fucking 1996. Like that. This movie feels like the '90s to me. I don't know, more than any other movie.
Hell yeah, dude! I'm excited. Do you also want to let the listeners know of a very special double feature we got coming up, Steven?
Oh yeah. So this week we have a bonus episode. We're gonna be doing Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick. We're gonna be dissecting. Yeah, it's the big box office hit. People are crazy about it. I've seen the original Top Gun multiple times. I watched it. I actually saw it in theaters last year. I was the only person in the theater. And yeah, I'm really stoked to see the new one. I'm just waiting for like there not to be as many people in the theater so I can go and hope that it'll be kind of quiet when I go. But yeah, we're going to be talking Top Gun this week as well.
Yeah, so just excited for that. But yeah, so I guess with all that said, Travis, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
For coming on. I really appreciate your picks. I really enjoyed them. But as always, at Uzumaki from the film chat, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a good one. Keep watching movies.
See ya.